Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Log Show here on YouTube. Would be on TikTok again, but there were some technical difficulties over there, which is why we have the late start. So we are only on YouTube today. But how is everyone doing today? As we had an exceptional week 15 over there in the NFL. So much was important and so many good games happened. That Bills Patriots game was an argument for game of the year. Not only that, we have the Chiefs being eliminated from the playoffs for the first time since 2013. Steelers get a big win on Monday night last night. We saw a 44-year-old Philip Rivers come out and actually compete on an NFL football field. That was exciting. Not only that, the Rams get a big win, and so much more happened as we enter the last 3 weeks of the NFL season here as it all closes down and comes to a week 18. Obviously, week 16 this week, blah, blah, blah. Not only that, the New York Knicks play a very big game tonight. Well, very big depending on who you talk to, where they will play for $1 million and the NBA Cup against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs at 7 o'clock tonight. So that one is a doozy. So much. St. John's plays Kentucky at the end of the week. I don't know. I've been out of the loop on hockey, I'll tell you that much. UFC, obviously we talked about 323 last week. What happens going into 324 is exciting. Baseball free agency really starting to heat up as we see some big moves as Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz both leave the New York Mets. We see Edwin Diaz go over to the what is this era's dark empire, even though the Yankees will always be the evil empire, but goes over to the dark side, as many people would call it right now. And Edwin Diaz is now officially a Dodger as of last Tuesday. And then I believe it was on Friday where we saw, or no, it was Wednesday, where we saw Pete Alonso sign with the Baltimore Orioles. So that has happened. The Yankees have sat in their house with the doors locked and the windows shut for all free agency. So as a Yankee fan, there's not much to talk about. Like, sure, I'll clap for Ahmed Rosario, which is literally the only move the New York Yankees have made so far. So again, I don't think there's a lot going on when it comes to the New York Yankees and that type of free agency, but hopefully they're trying to get a deal done with Cody Bellinger. I know reports have it with that whole situation that there's some miscommunication in the amount of years that's want to be done. I don't think it's necessarily um a money conversation, especially with the Yankees, but we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of holes to fill. A report came out. I was talking to a bunch of people around me about it, about Ketel Marte. He came out. He has his whole trade, no trade, yes trade list, where he ended up saying that he does not want to be traded to the New York Yankees. The list was a bunch of teams that were kind of scrubby outside of maybe like the Giants or a middle of the pack team. But besides that, it was like the Athletics, it was the Pirates, it was a lot of franchises that I understand why you wouldn't want to go to. But he did throw the Yankees on that list. So it seems like Ketel Marte is not an option for the Yankees. Is Kyle Tucker an option for the Yankees? Who knows? The Yankees got to do something soon, is how I'm just starting to feel about it. I'm tired of this lack of anything going on with the New York Yankees. So something has to happen there. But they nonetheless will do what the Yankees do and sit there and stay absolutely stagnant throughout the offseason as we watch all of the big dominoes fall. That's all I really have to talk about when it comes to baseball. That was my little rant about the New York Yankees literally doing nothing. I mean, quite literally, the New York Yankees are doing nothing this offseason. And that I would love for that to change. But we'll see when that changes, if that changes. What I really want to talk to is the week 15 of the NFL season that has just passed, that ended us last night. Shout out everyone who won their first round of their fantasy playoffs. Sorry to everyone who lost in the first round of the fantasy playoffs. You know, I had some kid in my league lose by 0.6 points. 0.06 points is what he lost by this week in the playoffs. So hopefully you're not that down bad in your fantasy playoffs, because that is a rough loss. I feel bad for my friend over there. But yeah, week 15, man. A kickoff to the fantasy playoffs, like I said, but what a week we had. It's kicked off with the Falcons upsetting the Buccaneers, which is a game I'm not really going to get into much. But the NFC South has become this type of division this year where, yes, I don't think we expect any of the teams to go on any sort of run or anything exceptional out of whichever the two teams out of the NFC South that make it to the playoffs is. But between the Buccaneers and the Panthers, we've seen it oddly get competitive when we saw the Buccaneers start out the season so hot, and then you just saw pieces fall, like Mike Evans got injured, and then Mbuka got injured for a little bit, and Bucky Irving was down for a little while, and they just got riddled with injuries and a lot of bad losses, like last week against New Orleans, and then this week playing Atlanta is a must-win game when you have the opportunity of a team that just beat you at home in New Orleans playing Carolina, hopefully getting a win in Carolina, which the Saints were able to do. So if the Buccaneers were able to win that game, it would have been huge for them and for the division as the season comes down here. But nonetheless, the Falcons get a big win on that one. Bears Browns 31-3. Did that one shock anyone? I'm not going to talk about that one though. The Ravens stay alive against the Bengals as they officially end the Bengals' playoff hopes, which was, I believe they officially got eliminated last week with the loss, but they pushed Joe Burrow and the Bengals down to 4-10. And I don't know, this game I definitely want to touch on a little bit as I go through my little run through of last week and really how I feel about everything. Before I get into my major stories, which I'm about to get into in a little bit. This game is very two-sided in where it's very heavy positives for the Ravens because this was a must-win game for the Ravens, and defensively they performed very well. You know, you get a pick six. Lamar on the offense still continued to not perform well, as you saw. They performed better than they did in that Thursday night Thanksgiving game against Cincinnati the first time, but still a very stagnant offense where it was kind of a lot of Derrick Henry, but still Derrick Henry's production didn't feel that important while you were watching the game. When statistically on the stat sheet he didn't do too well, or he didn't do too bad, but overall the feel of the game, the Ravens offense just felt continuously stagnant as they have. And when you have that coming down to the way that the season has unfolded now for Baltimore after such a rough start, going on a run late, and really now being able to fight for this playoff position with Pittsburgh, is you are now in a situation as Baltimore where you have to win out to make the playoffs. You have no other decision because the Steelers can lose the next two games with a game lead over you. The Steelers and the tiebreaker, the Steelers, like I was about to say, can lose the next two games as long as they win Week 18 against you guys, against the Ravens team. The division is put away. So for the Baltimore Ravens, for them to get that win against the Bengals, get a win coming up this week against the New England Patriots, which is going to be a very, very tough game, and then get another win against the Cleveland Browns after that, if I remember correctly. That's who they play. Or no. No, yeah, they play the Patriots, the Browns, and then I believe the Steelers, if I remember the end of the schedule correctly. So the Browns game is a sneaky one. That one is one where you could get stuck in a loss with a very good defense with Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and all those guys. And then on the other side, you also have, you have this week. You have the New England Patriots who are coming off a very tough loss. They wanted to secure the AFC East this week and could not. They wanted to steal a playoff position this week and could not. And they lose to the Buffalo Bills, and they're going to come into Baltimore with a lot of vengeance and a lot of like a big chip on their shoulder, trying to prove that they're not these frauds that everyone's been talking about with the New England Patriots for the past few weeks. For the past few weeks, you've been seeing it. People have been coming out about the New England Patriots schedule, about how they won 6 straight, and those 6 straight involved the Giants, the Jets twice, the Saints, and all these teams. And they were winning all these games, but they weren't against teams of high rapport. You go back to the college football playoff. If it was the college football playoff, I don't know if the committee would be putting the New England Patriots in due to strength of schedule. And we'll get into the college football playoffs and that whole spiel at one point. I know I talked about it a little last week, but my whole point with that is the Patriots are on a path to prove something, and they wanted to against Buffalo this past week and couldn't, and came up short after being up 10 at one point. And like I said, they came up short and lost that game to Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, where you're seeing Josh Allen have this late season playoff push, and you're seeing the Buffalo Bills really put it together again after a midseason slump, which happens to a lot of teams. But the Bills are still sitting at 10-4. A lot of people aren't talking about that Buffalo Bills team because of the Patriots, because the Patriots are sitting at 11-3. The Bills are still sitting at 10-4. The Bills are only a game back of that division. The Buffalo Bills have played very, very, very good football this year. And they wanted to prove themselves against them, and they couldn't. So a game against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, a struggling offense, a defense that just played well, but nonetheless, in the grand concept of the season, the Baltimore Ravens, I think a lot of us would consider a struggling defense as well. I it's a must-win game for Baltimore going into this week, where if you lose to New England this week, all the Steelers have to do is get one win out of these last 3 games. One of those 3 games is against Cleveland as well. They play the Steelers they play Detroit this week, and then Baltimore doesn't play Cleveland next week. And Baltimore plays, I don't know who Baltimore plays next week. It's the Steelers who play Cleveland next week. So yeah, if the Patriots beat the Ravens this week, the Steelers just have to beat the Browns next week, and they're in the playoffs. And all this talk about Mikey T out of town and booing Renegade and all that is all done, man. Because the Steelers are in the playoffs. Whether that be as a 9-win team, whether that be as a 10-win team, whether that be it come down to the last game of the season against the Baltimore Ravens to try to win the division. Whatever it is, this is a must-win game this week against the New England Patriots for the Baltimore Ravens, as much as last week was against the Cincinnati Bengals. And on the flip side of that game, you have a team like the Cincinnati Bengals where we're like, man, what has happened to this team? Like, the future was so bright for Cincinnati when we go back to that 2021 season where we saw the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow in his second year and Jamar Chase in his rookie year, and this team with defensive pieces bringing in, Trey Hendrickson was playing well, and that Lou Anarumo was over there as their DC at the time, and he's in Indianapolis now, and all these pieces, and the future just seems so bright in Cincinnati, where it seems like all of that hope for the future and all of that want of greatness, at least, not I'm not saying this is from Joe Burrow or from Jamar Chase or from those types of dudes, but I'm saying from almost like the front office's perspective. It is so insane to me that the Cincinnati Bengals just seem to have lost all will to win and all hope of their future. Joe Burrow, who throughout time has been this happy go lucky guy, even through thick and thin, through injury, through being the most sacked quarterback in the league over the past 5 years. Through everything that he's been through in Cincinnati, I feel like time and time again, we saw Joe Burrow go back into that press conference with a smile on his face, torn ACL, broken, all these injuries, wrist injuries, ankle injuries, knee injuries, all that. We always saw him feel so positive and so ready, and Jamar Chase as well. And now we're seeing Joe Burrow in press conferences are pretty much saying that he's losing his love for the game. What's the point of going out there if I'm not even having fun? And he's saying that he's not having fun. And you got Jamar Chase going, man, I've never seen Joey B talk like this. And all of that happening over there in Cincinnati when the future was so bright. You need some sort of change over there in Cincinnati. I don't know if it's Zach Taylor and you need a new head coach. I don't know if it's the front office. I don't know what it is that needs to change in Cincinnati, but something has to change immediately, because you cannot have Joe Burrow talking the way that he is talking. You cannot have, you know, these guys just absolutely destroyed mentally and physically and emotionally, it's so draining clearly on Joe Burrow to be the quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals that it's at what point do we look at this and say, yo, get him out of there? And I'm not, all right, let me take back actually what I just said. I'm going to retract that statement because I was kind of running on a roll there and misspoke. Not when do we say this, because I feel like we have been saying that for a while. I think the point has been for a while that Joe Burrow, get him out of Cincinnati, get him somewhere where he can stay healthy and not be beat up like this. But for Joe Burrow to be alluding to the fact that he no longer wants to be in Cincinnati, we are now at a different type of stepping point with this whole Cincinnati Joe Burrow relationship where it seems almost inevitable that Joe Burrow has to leave Cincinnati if there's no changes made this offseason, if there's not an immense overhaul of offensive linemen to try to come in, if you don't try to hire maybe a new offensive line coach, make some changes on the defensive side. Go get some pieces is what you should have done. You should have got a bunch of pieces for Trey Hendrickson, who doesn't want to be there anymore. You had your opportunities and you blow them time and time again in Cincinnati. Over and over again, the Cincinnati Bengals are consistently just not going. It seems like there's a lack of attempt out of the Cincinnati Bengals to take that next step. You were so close in 2021. And I feel like that's where we can separate management, and that's where the Cincinnati Bengals front office has to really look in a mirror and look at themselves. And it's not the play on the field, and it's maybe not the coaching, but as the front office, you got to take a look at yourselves because you went on an immaculate, magical run in that 2021 season to go win the AFC, go win the Super Bowl, go upset Joe Burrow, go, you know what I mean? Go upset Josh Allen in the playoffs, go all of that. You ran into a beautiful situation in 2021. And what you should have done as a front office is you should have looked at that and go, how do we build on this so we can return? It's the hardest thing and it's the most underrated thing in sports. It is the most lackluster, underappreciated thing in sports is getting back to the big game. And the Cincinnati Bengals just wrote a book for everything not to do when you make a Super Bowl. And that's nothing. They stood there stagnantly. They didn't try to improve. They felt that they were good enough. We were just this far away. We were almost there. What is happening? That's how the Cincinnati Bengals genuinely felt. They felt that they should have won the game in 2021, which is okay to feel that way. But for year after year after year after year to watch your team deteriorate and do nothing, and then when pieces don't fall in the place that you need them to not be able to react on the fly and adjust appropriately, I'm sorry, I don't see the Cincinnati Bengals getting back to the form that we saw of 2-3 years ago. I don't see that happening anymore. I look at the way that the Cincinnati Bengals franchise is trending, and I see them going back to the Cincinnati Bengals that we had known when you know Carson Palmer and AJ Green and Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis at running back and Andy Dalton, and that's what it's really starting to feel like. I don't feel it out of the Cincinnati Bengals anymore. I have zero confidence in this team. And the big thing that draws the confidence out of this team for me is bro, if you got Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase looking at you like that, you got Joe Burrow publicly saying in a press conference, "What's the point of me being out here if I'm not having fun anymore?" You have to really look at yourself if you're the Cincinnati Bengals here. Maybe just hit a hard reset and let Joe Burrow go have fun elsewhere. Let Ja'Marr Chase go have fun elsewhere. Let Trey Hendrickson walk and go just get a haul of picks and see if you can maybe do it again. But right now, the Cincinnati Bengals, what they need to do is take a breath and uh hopefully build around Joe Burrow. That would be that would be the hope is build around Joe Burrow. Is get there and build around Joe Burrow. It's what you want to do. He's a top 5 quarterback in the league when he at worst. Joe Burrow is so talented. the windows that he is able to fit passes in, his decision making, his footwork, his athleticism, the way that he extends plays. Joe Burrow is absolutely exceptional, man. You cannot blow this opportunity if you're Cincinnati, and you are this close. You are on thin ice at this point if you're Cincinnati. We are no longer at a point with the Cincinnati Bengals where it's, well, they got potential, but if they just get a few pieces around, it's like, no, if you don't get a piece around Joe Burrow, like ASAP, if you don't go into this offseason with the mind, with the pattern and the thought pattern uh of Joe Burrow will leave if we don't do something now. It's not, oh, we have time to wait. It's Joe Burrow will leave if we don't do something now. So Cincinnati, do something now. Because there's no up, down, left, right. You have no more waiting room. You have no more wiggle room. You are on the thinnest piece of ice that is already cracking and already, you already got a few inches of water above the ice. You haven't sunk yet. But god damn are you close. God damn are you close if you're Cincinnati. And you got to really take a breath and approach this season, this offseason with some, what's the word I'm trying to get to here? With some guts and with some confidence and with the priority that Joe Burrow needs to be healthy and Joe Burrow needs to win. And we need to make, as he said, we need to make football fun again. That's what you're asking. That's what your main goal should be. Number one, right? You turn around, you're right on that whiteboard, right? Number one on that whiteboard. Big letters, you should write. Make Joe have fun again. That should be in all caps the whole whiteboard. Because you're in deep shit right now, Cincinnati, and you need to fix it. Because you got your two young star players looking at it like they don't know what the future's like, and they don't like that feeling, and nobody does. Because the future was very bright, and it's no longer there. It is no longer there. Speaking of other places where futures are no longer bright, you guys remember 2 years ago when the Miami Dolphins dropped 70 points on the Denver Broncos? You guys remember that? Tua. They just got Tyreek Hill. Devon Achane was blowing up that year. They dropped 70 points, and we all took a step back and go, damn, you got this Mike McDaniel guy now. You got pieces. Woo! That's what happened to the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins never even hit that mountaintop before they fell down. They hit base camp 1 and fell down. They never even won a division. They never went anywhere in the playoffs. At least the Cincinnati Bengals, when you look at the collapse of the Cincinnati Bengals, you could sit there and go, you know what? They made a Super Bowl. They did get an AFC championship before the collapse. They had reached the mountaintop. They may have gotten knocked off it by the Rams, and the Rams were the pinnacle of the mountaintop that year. But the Bengals did sniff the peak. Boy, have the Miami Dolphins have collapsed. And it seems like Mike McDaniel, as of last night, may have sold his soul and really sent his what felt like the way he just gave up in the second half felt like it felt like the letter of recognition. Sorry. Resignation. There we go. It felt like the letter of resignation from Mike McDaniel is what that performance felt like last night, if I'm gonna be completely honest. The Miami Dolphins are just everything about the Miami Dolphins, just the energy in the building is so low. Like I was said about the Bengals, where there was this like where the Bengals and you saw Joe Burrow, they lacked this confidence in the future. I feel like the Miami Dolphins go out there week after week thinking they're gonna lose. Like that's what it almost feels like watching the Miami Dolphins play football now. Like, yes, don't get me wrong, Devon Achane is having an exceptional year as an NFL running back, and he has been the heart and soul of that Miami team all year. Jalen Waddle has had a pretty decent season too. Jalen Waddle has not been playing poorly. Fantasy numbers wise, he's a top 20 receiver. Actual numbers wise and route running wise, he's probably a top 20 receiver. I'd have to double check that. I don't know it off the top of my head. But Waddle's his numbers are pretty decent. Waddles. So you have this situation here when you're the Miami Dolphins, and it's just whatever's going on is coming from the coaching staff or the front office, and it starts with Mike McDaniel, and it seems like it's coming from him, where it's just this. The team felt so fun back then when Mike McDaniel first came in and we first had Tyreek there, and like I said, they were dropping 70 points against the Denver Broncos, and it was this fast paced, high, six motions before the snap, trick plays, triple flip, deep throw option offense. That was so exciting to watch. But then, as time went on, we have slowly seen this Miami Dolphins team just get older and deteriorate so much faster than anybody expected. That window shut on them with extreme time. You look back at what those highlights were of that 2021 team. You go to Tua Tagovailoa. He has now been nothing but he reduced to nothing but a husk of himself after injury and concussion after concussion after concussion. It's been a tragic road for Tua Tagovailoa, especially the way he played originally in this Mike McDaniel offense. It's been tragic to see how that goes. But his play is year after year getting worse and worse and worse. Not only that, you have the dip of the Tyreek Hill production until he gets injured super early this year. And it seems that all roads lead to Tyreek Hill no longer being a Miami Dolphin at the start of next season. You had Jalen Ramsey in there at the time. You had Jalen Phillips in there going off at the time. You had so many pieces, so many young, bright pieces, and it seems to have all just crumbled so fast for the Miami Dolphins. And it leaves the biggest question of will they bring back and return Mike McDaniel next year? Will he return to the I apologize for that. Will he return to the Miami Dolphins? Is the biggest question for the Miami Dolphins, I think, right now. Is the future of your head coach. And when I look at the performance that I've seen out of Mike McDaniel this year, at the beginning of the year, I was not necessarily this huge fan for firing Mike McDaniel. I didn't think that it was this great idea to, hop on this gun, but I genuinely just feel like he's lost that locker room entirely. I don't think that anybody wants to win for him. And that's what I mean when I say the Miami Dolphins, it feels like the Miami Dolphins go out there week after week and almost want to lose. Is I just feel week after even when the games that they have won, they have 4 wins this year. And in those 4 or 5 games that they've won this year, or the 4 games that they've won this year, I I still never felt like excitement about the fact that they were winning. It doesn't feel like they want to win for Mike McDaniel. It doesn't feel like they want to win ever. It just feels like they're going out there to play football and just put out a product and do whatever happens. And it's just you saw it again last night against the Steelers. It felt like they tried for maybe the first quarter and a half of that football game. I turned it off at halftime. It felt like they tried for the first quarter and a half. I felt it before a half that I felt the Dolphins' effort just and absolutely plummet. Just it's the truth. Like that's what I felt genuinely happen. last night, and it feels that way week after week out of this Miami Dolphins team. And I think they're the person to blame at this point is Mike McDaniel. I think there's no choice. Like I said, I think Mike McDaniel has completely lost the locker room. I don't think anybody over there wants to win for him. I think you have a situation where, it goes back when I really look deep into it. It goes back to last year. You got players that want to win for your team. They're not getting arrested before games like Tyreek Hill is. You don't have the stuff that Tua is saying in press conferences being said. You don't like just everything about Miami just feels so doom and gloom right now that I can't help but feel I can't see a path where they choose Mike McDaniel to be their head coach next year. I don't see a path where they look at this season of last year and like what path is that? Like where do you see a path as the Miami Dolphins where you go back and you see Mike McDaniel as your head coach next year? Because I don't see it. Like I genuinely don't see it. And I don't know. Obviously, I've been saying this a lot about the New York Giants head coaching search, which thankfully the energy of that has been brought down to a screeching halt. No one's really talking about it because I'm tired of talking about it for right now while we're in the middle of an NFL season. But I don't know who the options are for the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins. I don't know if Mike McDaniel has another opportunity as a head coach after being fired in the way that this has ended in Miami. If he does get fired, again, I'm not an oracle here. They could 100% bring back Mike McDaniel for another year. I mean, like I said, when you look at the tenure of the Miami Dolphins and you really break down where the Miami Dolphins have really the positives are there are a lot of high highs about the Mike McDaniel era in Miami. So maybe that's not the first switch you take. Maybe you take a switch at the quarterback position first. And you go draft a guy this year or you go sign someone in free agency and you go, "Hey Tua, this ain't it no more. We're going to move on from you." And that's the change you make. But one of those two, it's either the end of the Tua era or it's the end of the McDaniel era in Miami, and whichever one it is, it's a change that needs to be made. They need to figure something out. They need to get some sort of energy back in that locker room of the Miami Dolphins. Because what we saw last night in that loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers was just, bro, the Miami Dolphins got ripped apart by an old guy who takes ayahuasca with a cast on his left arm. Think of that. Can we break that down real quick? Just think of that whole situation. Aaron Rodgers with a cast on his left arm made the Miami Dolphins look silly last night. And as much as I love Aaron Rodgers, and I could talk days, and I could Skip Bayless type hype up Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is not that good. Where with a cast on his left arm, he should be looking as good as he did last night. At his age, he's not like that. That is a lack of effort completely out of the Miami Dolphins. Lack of effort, a lack of want, a lack of will, and it's just changes need to be made in these places, people. Changes need to be made in these places. Look at all these teams making changes, man. Giants are making changes. Jets are making changes. You got teams making changes, man. Now, are you going to be one of those teams that makes the changes? Or are you going to sit there stagnant and, you know what I mean? And not let anything happen there? Because, man, like I said, bro, I remember the hype of that Miami Dolphins team when they first got Tyreek and all that. Everyone thought, whew, that hype was through the roof. And they met it immediately by dropping a 70 burger in an NFL game. And then since that 70 burger, it's all just I mean, yeah, bro. I mean, as exciting as the weekend was, now that I'm looking at all my headlines, it's a very negative week. Because the next thing I'm about to get into is I mean, we saw for the first time since 2014, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to miss the playoffs. Now, when I bring up this game, the reason why I bring it up with this weird uncertainty that you hear in my voice as we speak is I look at that Chiefs team, and I think a lot of us really did feel that, yes, obviously, if they're the Chiefs, if they were put in the dance, there was threats of a run, 100%. But also what I'll say is with the Chiefs, I don't think a lot of us felt this team was built for a run. So what am I getting into? Logan, what are you trying to say? What I'm trying to say is the result of the Chiefs Chargers game no longer matters with what happened to Patrick Mahomes. I think all of the loose jokes that many of us hopefully believed in the back of our heads may have done something. Patrick Mahomes tearing his ACL and his LCL, or MCL, I believe it was. And that happening on December 14th of the 2025 NFL season is something that will possibly affect the future of the next 3 to 4 years of the NFL. And why do I say that? Well, not only do we have the situation of this year with seeing the now Kansas City Chiefs, who are the 8-time AFC champions, not make the playoffs this year. We now possibly lack Patrick Mahomes for almost up to half of the season next year, if not more. So we might be seeing back-to-back seasons where we watch the Kansas City Chiefs miss the playoffs. So if anybody felt that this was the Patriots dynasty, windows have never been more open with this Patrick Mahomes injury. And it's tragic to honestly put out there. I feel very bad for Patrick Mahomes because Peter Schrager said it the best. So I'll shout out Peter Schrager for this take that I'm going to honestly probably spew word for word. So do not say, this is not my own words. This is Peter Schrager through and through. But it made it click in my head. The difficulty of what this offseason has now become for the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes has just changed exponentially. Because originally what this season was going to be was, okay, I'll take a step back as Patrick Mahomes. Yes, no matter what, as Kansas City, we were going to have to retool and make changes because this season went way flatter than anybody ever could have expected out of us this year. We missed the playoffs, all of it. It went as flat as possible. As, you know what I mean? As we feel as the Kansas City Chiefs. What I also feel about that sentence, though, is now with this injury, you now have a full off season of rehab. You have surgeries. The Kansas City Chiefs now have to go find a quarterback that can play 7 to 8 games and keep them afloat. You know, not only that, there were going to be major changes made to the offense already, to the defense, possibly to the coaching staff. Who knew where the Hunts, the Chiefs GM, Andy Reid were going to sit in a room what they were going to decide for the offseason. But originally, what this offseason was a sit back and a deep breath and a retool. And that is all changed now with this Patrick Mahomes injury. And I wish the speediest recovery for Mr. Patrick Mahomes. And I know Oh my God. Everyone's like, oh my God, bro. Everyone's only talking about Patrick Mahomes tearing his ACL. Oh my God, bro. They were going to miss the playoffs anyway. Nobody cares about Patrick Mahomes. Bro, he's the face of the league. Whether you like it or not, he is the face of the league. He's the face of the league because of how good he is. And to lose that player is a big deal. I don't care. It will. This is going to affect so much of the NFL. From a business perspective, a player like Patrick Mahomes, the face of your league, going down and being out until at minimum, he's gonna miss the start of next season. If not, he's possibly out till mid-season, maybe even longer. That affects business deals. That affects commercials. That affects everything. That affects scheduling. That affects, prime time, not prime time game. That affects so much because of the draw that Patrick Mahomes is that you now lose. And like I said, I wish the best for Patrick Mahomes. I wish a speedy recovery. Who knows? The grateful thing is in 2025, it's not like how I felt like it was when I grew up, when I was younger. And it's not this gigantic death sentence of an injury. An ACL is not this, my career is over. Do I think he's even going to lose a step? I could argue he might not even. He could come back just as good as ever. But that is if that is a it's a if it's an if we are now in ifs with Patrick Mahomes, and it's scary. It is scary when an injury like this happens to such a big all-star, not even just all-star, superstar, face of the league type of player, because who knows what can happen to Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes' future is now officially uncertain. And he has been the best player in football for the past 7 to 8 years. He took the baton from Brady with an all-time type of sprint, and he immediately started winning Super Bowls, and immediately took a chokehold on the AFC. And now that chokehold is going to be let loose for at least the next 2 seasons. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow, if you're the New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos, the Jacksonville Jaguars, these young upcoming franchises, now is your time to really, really, really try to make something happen in the AFC. Because, you know, it's weird when you look at it. It really is. Brady tears his ACL in 2008, right? Wins the 2009 Comeback Player of the Year award. The Patriots win in 01. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of this. What is that, year 10 for Brady? What year was Brady in when he tore? So it was the start of his ninth NFL season. And Mahomes is an 8, right? Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Year 9. Year 9. So, what am I trying to get to here? Why did I just go silent and all those gears were turning in my head? You guys may be wondering right now. Because I break it down like this. The Patriots dynasty was this great dynasty, right? It was all Super Bowls against the greatest show on turf. saw, you know, Super Bowl wins in 01, 03, 05. And then in his 9th NFL season, Tom Brady goes down with a high-low hit that changes the NFL, changes the rule book. Brady tears his ACL. And what did that do? That opened up the window for now. We saw the Colts go make a Super Bowl, and you see Manning win one against the Bears. And you see Drew Brees go win one in the NFC, and you see the Steelers start to win a couple. And the Patriots dynasty took a break for a little bit. But then here they came, slowly but surely. And they lose to the Giants in 2012. And then they're back. History repeats itself, folks. And right now we got a quarterback who took over the league from Storm. Won a lot of Super Bowls. Had a manhandle on the AFC. And in year 9, has tore his ACL. Now, the Patriots were a bit different. You had Bill Belichick as your head coach. You had Matt Castle come in. That you still go 11-6 that year as New England. The Chiefs are in a lot different spot in that situation. They'd not go 11-6 without Patrick Mahomes, and he got injured early in the year. Mahomes is out late in the year. He's going to be out next season, etc. But my point is here. Don't count the Chiefs out. Now, a window has opened for the next few years that we've seen this window open before in history when Tom Brady tore his ACL. Because it's not only going to take time for the Chiefs to recover, for Mahomes to recover. It will take a year or two for him to get back into full form. And then also, like I said, the Chiefs have to rebuild around the talent. Mahomes needs the pieces around him. This all has to happen around Mahomes. But my point is what I'm saying here is this also does open up the opportunity for Patrick Mahomes, for the Kansas City Chiefs, to really open up a different path and really look at themselves in the mirror where maybe you weren't going to do that as intensely as you were without the Mahomes injury. And that could be a blessing in disguise like it was for the New England Patriots. Because you want to know what came out of that injury for the New England Patriots? Pliability. And anybody who's ever listened to Tom Brady talk knows about pliability in your body and this and that. That injury introduced and started the TB12 method and pliability. And I'm not saying, we're going to get the PM15 method. I'm not saying we're going to get the Mahomes, the Mahomes money method or whatever. But I don't think it's necessarily over. A lot of people are thinking this is a death warrant with the way the season's gone and then it ends with a Patrick Mahomes ACL. I'm just saying. And maybe, I'll be on freezing cold takes in 2 years, and the Chiefs will have the number 1 overall pick. And all of it will have fallen apart. Mahomes will never be the same after the Super Bowl. But also maybe I'll be taking this clip in 3 years and showing you guys. And history repeats itself. And Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs is not over. It all depends on how they approach this offseason. This is now the most important offseason that the Chiefs have had since, honestly, drafting Mahomes. This is that important of an offseason. This is the most important offseason that you have had since the 2014 offseason where you cut Alex Smith and decided to start Patrick Mahomes. That is what level of importance this is on. We also saw Micah Parsons tear his ACL. That is terrible. Not as big as an impact to the Packers because it's not your star quarterback. It's not the face of the league. But Micah Parsons is a damn good player, man. It's definitely impactful. So hopefully, and also speedy recovery to him. But yeah, guys, as we round out here, the NFL playoffs as we get into the last 3 weeks is so interesting. So intense, man. So intense. We're finally in that point where it's not 9 teams on the bubble. There's 2 teams left on the bubble in the AFC, 3 teams left in the NFC. One of which is tied with, one of them is the Panthers in the NFC, who's tied with the Buccaneers at 7-7. You have the Lions a game back of the Packers. You got the Cowboys a game, 2 games back of the Eagles. You know, AFC side, you got the Ravens a game back of the Steelers, and they end the season against each other. You got the Colts Texans fighting for a spot where it really sucks to say this about the Colts, but watching that game on Sunday, the Colts season is over, man. They're not going to win a playoff game. They're not going to even make the playoffs, and it sucks to say that after such an exceptional start to the season, and it all gets disrupted really because of the Daniel Jones injury, and it really really sucks for Indianapolis because it was such a great year that they were having over there, but they don't feel like as impressed as I was by the performance of Philip Rivers. He looked comfortable in there. The report came out before that he's been running that offense with his high school team, and he talks to Shane Steichen weekly about plays. So, like, his knowledge of the offense was there. He felt comfortable. He moved well in the pocket. He played well. He didn't play exceptionally well. It wasn't like oh my God, Philip Rivers at 44. Is he gonna like? No, he's gonna take his money. He's gonna take his few checks and bounce at the end of the year, which is all right, and all power to Philip Rivers. You saw the emotion he had in the press conference afterwards, and that's a real thing, and I'm proud of him. It's a very proud moment for him to be able to have, and it's very cool to look at that. He's a grandfather, and like he said, the easy thing would have been to go, nah, I'm too old, and throw your feet back up on the couch. The perseverance comes and the toughness comes with going, no, I could still do this. I can still do this. Let me go prove I can still do this. So shout out Philip Rivers, but I do think that Colts season is over. But as we get into week 16 here, the Broncos and Rams are the only 2 teams who have clinched themselves a playoff spot. Patriots, Niners, Eagles, and Seahawks can all clinch with a win this week. Bills, Chargers, Jaguars need a win plus a loss from either Indianapolis or Houston this week. And then the winner of Green Bay, Chicago can clinch with a win plus a Detroit loss. So a lot coming up. I mean, Sweet 16 slate, man. Rams Seahawks on Thursday night, bro. This is going to be the most intense game of the year. This is the biggest game of the year for both these teams. Possibly no Davante Adams for the Rams, and you just look at this game where this game is not only for the NFC West, which we got so much like intensity about. This game is for the number 1 spot in the playoffs. This game is to be the best team in the NFC. And the best team in the NFC, most likely or not, is the team that has been looking like the most Super Bowl contender, which to me has been the Rams. But with no Davante Adams, possibly, Puka was a question mark until a few days ago, or until yesterday. I don't know what's going to happen with this game. This game is going to be a very, very, very good game, very intense game. When I scroll up over here, I want to say it's like, yeah, they're giving the Rams, or they're giving Seahawks half a point in the spread, over under at 44.5. It's an intense game. I can't wait to watch it. I'm going to be tuning in on Thursday night because that is probably game of the week on Thursday night. Not only that, on Saturday night, we got 2 games on Saturday this week. Eagles Commanders, which is not as much as a doozy, but then you end the night with Bears Packers, which again is for the division. Bucks Panthers again is for the division. You have Jags at Broncos, which is huge AFC playoff implications, as well as Patriots Ravens on Sunday night.